Hello, welcome. I'm Walter Waddell, your host this morning on the Live Before Lock Q&A CFB show, the Super Show, brought to you by the FTN Network. Feeling very Mr. Rogers, neighborly, friendly, ready to rock and roll today. I hope you guys are as well. We had a bit of an odd week 3, but week 4 is going to be very good to us. I feel great. I hope you feel great. And this is what we're here to do. Get some green screens and those window trips. This show is for you guys. I'm going to go through and do a news dump, kind of rehash some of my core, give you the top 5 ownership, at least from our projections at each position, and then, answer any questions you may have, this or that. Or anything in between. Questions, comments, and concerns, throw them at me on Discord, on X, on YouTube, anywhere. Text me if you want to. A lot of you guys have my number. But we're going to get in here and we're going to do some nice things. It's a 13-game slate. We're going to focus primarily on that, but I also have the FanDuel slate pulled up. So you FanDuelers with any questions, we can get into that as well. Give you a little bit of a FanDuel player pool. Didn't have a lot of time on Thursday night just because 13 games is a bear. But overall, feeling pretty good. I think we're going to do some serious damage here. All right, let's see. Just want to make sure I have the right slate pulled up. All right, so news-wise, first question off top, Ollie Gordon. We'll get there. Lenora Sellers for South Carolina, doubtful. And you guys probably don't care too much about that. We have a game time decision on Cam Rising for Utah. Sounds like he's going to end up playing, but obviously not being 100%. I think today is the day that Dorian Singer kind of shows up, but almost rather Wilson is the quarterback because he has something going with him. But Cam Rising, as it stands right now, game time decision, but expected to play and not be 100%. Not really that's not great news by any means. Quarterback situation for Florida, we're still looking at Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway playing. Eugene Wilson is out. Had surgery on the meniscus. I think that he's probably not going to return. Florida's a dumpster fire. It would be a real shock if he played again or ever in a Gators uniform. We know Khalil Jackson is out for them as well. And then it does sound like the exciting youngster Tank Hawkins is off the injury report now. He was questionable for most of the week, but now he's going to be in. Still fine with Elijah Badger and Chimere Dike. They should get majority of the targets either way, but Hawkins is now back in the mix, taking a little bit from them. Dike will benefit from the drives with Mertz. Badger will benefit from the drives with Lagway. Let's see. What else? Colston Loveland. I know he's listed as questionable. We don't really care too much about that game for the most part from a DFS perspective. I think he is actually more doubtful than probable, so take that for what it's worth. Cam Coleman for Auburn missed last week. He is expected to suit up. We'll see how he does in warmups. Definitely like that Auburn-Arkansas game a little bit more than I think the masses do based on some of the ownership that we're seeing here. Coleman definitely makes a difference, but we really just care about Jarquez Hunter there. For Notre Dame, Jordan Faison is back questionable once again. He's dealing with the ankle issue. He didn't end up playing in Purdue, even though he was trending towards probable. Sounds like that ankle issue is not going to be fixed anytime soon, so we'll see what happens there. Not a big deal. We don't love it. If we're looking to Notre Dame, we're really on that Riley Leonard train there, huh? Some afternoon delight lineups there with some Riley Leonard. For West Virginia, Preston Fox is going to be, he's got the dreaded dressed out. I absolutely hate that terminology, dressed out. He's either in or he's out, but he is dressed and is going through warm-ups. Considered a game time decision call there for West Virginia. We are expecting Garrett Green to have a pretty nice game against Kansas, but we want him to do it with his legs. But he will have what it looks like his full array of receivers at his disposal. On Clemson, Tyler Brown is currently warming up. He has the ankle injury going into this one. Didn't play a whole lot in the App State game. The freshman ended up playing really well with Brown, sideline. Clemson absolutely put it on App State. Don't expect Cade Klubnik to go full Alan Bowman today, but has some really nice options at his disposal. Bryant Wesco, the freshman that I like a hell of a lot. That's going to be one of my guys. I can tell you right now, I'm going to be a big Wesco fan. And then, of course, the mid-price TJ Moore, also a pretty solid and dynamic option there as a freshman. Even if Brown ends up playing, I don't foresee him being terribly effective. So we'll see what happens. I hate to say it, but again, NC State's going to have struggles in this one, but do have some GPP exposure to Wesco there, even if Brown plays, for what it's worth. We know at quarterback, the freshman CJ Bailey is going to be getting the start. Not a great matchup for him. Exciting player, though, has dual threat. I think sooner rather than later, he ends up taking the reins and just running out this season. Grayson McCall, not warming up right now, which is kind of what we expected. I thought he was going to be a hell of a lot better in a NC State uniform, and he had a great first game against Western Carolina, but he has been taking a ton of sacks, and things just aren't working out right now for NC State. Big disappointment thus far. CJ Bailey getting the start. And then keep an eye on that one, but I'm probably not going to have too much exposure on him right yet. Jaquindon Jackson popped up on the report with a probable tag. Not really sure why. He's going to play. I was kind of warning you guys on Thursday, like, hey, let's just, keep an eye on this just in case something happens. Doesn't appear to be the case. Obviously, that game is later, but I don't see anything that suggests he won't play today. So that is a good thing for us. I think that's all the relevant injury news for us right now. Daniel Highshaw expected to be back in the mix playing for Kansas. Means a little bit less carries for Devin Neal. And then Samuel Brown dealing with a injury of his own for Rutgers. That is an interesting game. I think it's not going to affect anything too much, but if they're down one of their primary running back / receiver options, because they use him in a variety of ways, it just means more Monagai for us, who we think is going to run for like 250 yards. That is Jake Kuchek's slate breaker, and this is one that I'm heavily on. A little bit of more injury news. Trey Cooley still out for Georgia Tech. Some more Jamal Haynes, even though he's been kind of trending the opposite direction. And then for Texas Tech, Cam Valdez is going to be out for the remainder of the season. Lots of Taj Brooks today. Don't particularly love the matchup for him because ASU's done good on the ground, but he is going to be getting all of those carries. And then one final bit of injury news here for this slate. Bayshell Tootin. Don't have official word yet because that is a game that takes place a little bit later in the day. But he has been very limited in practice. I ultimately think he plays, but I don't think he's going to be terribly effective. It's just going to basically muck things up there if you want Kieran Drones. All right, so that is the news dump. Let's see here. Someone asking me if I do projection spreadsheets. I am doing them. I'm not. What is it? Week 4. I'm not confident enough to release them like we did in college basketball. We're definitely going to have college basketball projections early as possible every day. For college football, doing an ownership aggregation and then messing about with projections. I think by week 6, I'll feel confident enough to actually put those on site and in our Discord. But that is something that you can expect. It's a long season. I just wanted to at least have a quarter of it in the bank there before we started releasing that stuff, because it's just hard to go off of 1 to 2 games. You can go off of last year's snaps and matchups, but so many things change, right, because of the transfer portal. So I just felt like it was a disservice if I released those now and they weren't fine-tuned. But they're getting there, and I'm going to definitely reference them here today when I'm talking about some of our core plays. All right. What we got here? Everyone in the green today. Brett Belke, my underdog partner. That's my man, my dude, my guy. Joking about with him, never thought I'd be excited to watch or track a Minnesota versus Iowa game, but I am completely enamored with Caleb Johnson. Kind of turned the corner on Darius Taylor, like him a lot, even though I took his season under, which may be a mistake. But yeah, I'm excited to see that game. And I told him I hope that basically both offenses just hand it off to Johnson and Taylor like 50 times each and just like bay the best man win. My dude Aaron, Lucas, Josh Kelly, or Elijah Badger, Jalen Connors. So Conyers is he and I were having a conversation about Conyers here before the show. Haas is really touchdown dependent, so I don't know that I could get behind using him even in your Taylor Green lineups. I do like Haas. He bailed us out a couple of weeks against Oklahoma State with that like late 40-yard touchdown. Just PPR work's not going to be there for him, so that's more of a GPP look there because he's just so touchdown dependent. Kelly, the WR1 there at Tech, should get a lot of offense. I have this really weird, strange feeling that Texas Tech ASU is not going to be quite as amazing as people think it's going to be. It's just like every time we have that game on the slate where it's like, this is can't miss. We're going to stack it up. It's going to score 1 million points. And then we go into it. It ends up being like a turnover fest and 3 and outs. And I don't know. I'm concerned about that one, but I have exposure everywhere in every lineup. So not that concerned, but definitely have a weird feeling. With that being said, Badger, I do like him a lot. Even with Hawkins back, Badger to me is the top option there. DK, they're just going to split. They're going to get most of the targets. Arliss Boardingham, the tight end, will get some work. Badger's cheap enough to still use. A little more in-depth because I didn't have time to talk with you as much on Conyers. I know you're not a big revenge guy. Conyers playing against his former team. You don't even have to consider that, but it is interesting. But they just use Conyers in a variety of ways. And ASU did that too. Like they use him in wildcat situations. He gets carries. They put him in the slot. They send him out. Like they do a lot of things with Conyers. And that's what they're doing here at Texas Tech as well. He's just a really versatile weapon. He's a big, strong kid who can take carries. In fact, he's already done that for Texas Tech a few times. You'll look at and see that maybe the overall numbers don't necessarily jump off the page at you, but you look at WSU, he did have 3 carries, pulling up his target share right quick. And we know this is an offense that is very spread out for the most part. Yes, Kelly's getting a lot of work, but there's enough to go around for a lot. Conyers is 4th on the team in targets with 11, but a very good catch rate, 100%. I think that's pretty decent. Caught all 11 of those for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. The main thing here is I think Conyers is going to score a touchdown today, which is going to be great as his price tag of $4K. Kelly, Eakin, Douglas are all ahead of him in terms of overall PPR work, but Conyers is a very safe play. And I do think that they're going to get him some additional touches, like 5 to 7 touches, whether that's on a couple of carries or 5+ targets. And it wouldn't shock me if he had a season high in touches, getting even closer to 10. He's a bit of a mismatch for ASU. Yes, they know his skill set. They know him very well, but this offense, especially with it kind of morphing a bit, Texas Tech's offense is that's still pass heavy, but they have Taj Brooks healthy. He's an absolute just star. He's requiring more carries, which you're not maybe necessarily accustomed to with this coaching staff. In the way that they run their offense, but it's definitely favorable for Conyers. And I'll say ASU's rush defense has actually been pretty good. When you go into it, yes, they've played Wyoming, Mississippi State, and Texas State, and the main one there, Texas State, like Ishmael Mahdi, a very strong, Sun Belt Player of the Year candidate type of player. Only was able to get to 68 yards on those 14 carries. They did a pretty fair job there. It was the passing game that they struggled with. Mississippi State, same kind of thing, although Mississippi State doesn't have really greatness at the running back position, although Johnny Daniels seems like he'll do good. They kept everybody under there. 35 yards was the high for Keeley. It was a big-time passing game. The secondary of ASU is definitely struggling more. And then if you go in and look at the Wyoming game, overall, their defense was really, really solid there as well. DJ Jones, the North Carolina transfer, had 18 carries but couldn't even generate 45 yards on that. So it remains to be seen if ASU's rush defense is going to be this solid long-term. But I do think that it'll make sense for Texas Tech to use Conyers in the short yardage game in lieu of the running game there, especially if Brooks is unable to get going. So very long way of saying Conyers and Badger for me. Pancho, USC versus Michigan. Are you asking for a pick there? I think that let's see what it is currently. Let's go to our go-to on DraftKings. I'm with our resident USC expert, Jake Kuchek, who kind of broke that game down from a betting perspective. Neither team particularly exciting in this game. I think it's going to be lower scoring. We know Alex Orji's getting the start for Michigan. Donovan Edwards might be cooked. USC is getting a lot of hype. I'm not there with them. I think that this could be a bit of a wake-up call game for them. Right now, it looks like USC is -4.5, and I know earlier on Thursday it was 5, so that's gone down slightly. Total's gone from 43.5 to 44. I personally like the under. I think we see like a 17-10 type of game, and I do like Michigan to cover there at home. So, but that's not one of my featured bets. That's just answering your question directly. That's not one that I'm like running out and putting the stamp of guarantee on. Hey, T9, my guy, feeling good. Yeah, I felt good last week and just absolutely got dirt napped, and that happens when you play every slate. That's going to happen. But I will say I feel a lot better about the on paper setup of this slate. We have some really good options that we're heavy on that are not projecting super chalky, and really the slate looks like it's open for interpretation after Phil Maffa and after Ja'Cory Brooks, who are two really obvious plays on DraftKings. The ownership appears to be spread out. And I made the comment there in Discord. That's when we tend to be at our absolute best. We're going to delve into ownership here in a minute. Favorite quarterback 2 on FanDuel. Let me get into FanDuel here. I think I might have the wrong CSV pulled up. Miami's on the main slate, right? I know they're on the night slate of FanDuel. Okay, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it is Kansas. Okay, Cam Ward. I'm assuming you're on Taylon Green there in FanDuel too. You might not be able to fit Cam Ward, but on FanDuel, I typically play the secondary slates instead of the main. So the night slate is one of my favorite that I play over on FanDuel. It tends to be really soft. I'm a big Miami proponent, so I'm doing everything I can to get Miami exposure and Cam Ward. And over on FanDuel, I'm almost if I was playing the main slate, okay with dropping Taylon Green there at that almost $11K price tag and just plugging Cam Ward in. I'm pretty confident that Cam Ward throws for 304. I know you're not going to have the rushing upside that Taylon Green does, but Ward's still popping 30 plus, even as a predominantly pocket passer, but he does have the rushing upside. But expect Miami to be extremely surgical once again and put up 30 plus points, which is 300 plus yards and 4 touchdowns for Cam Ward. He would be my favorite there. If you need if you're set on running Taylon Green, then I would go down and play like a Thomas Castellanos from BC, who I think is going to have a really nice game against Sparty later. Or leaning into like a Blake Shapen play, who I do think they have read a report last night They haven't. Chapin's a mobile quarterback. You wouldn't know it if you only looked at him this year, but they've been preventing him from being in those situations because they're trying to protect him because the O-line's been mediocre when it comes to running. But I think we can expect some running upside today for Blake Chapin in that game against Florida. So he might be one that I look at. And then I'm getting a ton of questions privately in DMs. Alex Orji's price on FanDuel at 7.8. Kevin Jennings at 8K. I don't mind Kevin Jennings. I don't think we're in a situation anymore where he and Preston Stone are switching drives. It sounds like Jennings is going to be the guy. If he were to fail and fall on his face in the first half, then we would see Stone, but it's a good matchup. Not enough people talking about TCU SMU this week. On Underdog all week during Battle Royale drafts, TCU was getting drafted like in the, any of those players in the second and last rounds. Cam Cook, Savion Williams, Josh Hoover. So I think people are overlooking that. But Cam Ward is my answer for FanDuel quarterback. If you need if you're married to Taylor Green, and I can't blame you, I'm on him too. Then I would go the Kevin Jennings, Blake Chapin, Alex Orji route, one of those three. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. Never late, man. Never late. Whenever you join and support and drop the likes and help us out, we do appreciate it. The morning show live before lock, it needs you. So I'm glad you're here. All right. It's morning time. So, yep. Sorry about that. That was a appearance from the young one. My youngest daughter has her friend over, and she spent the night last night, and they were up to like 1, and they were trying to pull an all-nighter, but they're 7, so they couldn't. But in here asking me if dinner's ready yet. Silly kids. All right. Is it a 4 running back slate? I should just answer that like at the beginning of the show each time. Main slate on DraftKings, I do think shapes up as a 4 running back slate. I always say that though. There has been 2 slates so far that I've said 2 quarterbacks. So if you're running 2 quarterbacks, I think Taylor Green, Garrett Green, the double green is probably your best bet. You can pay up for Baron Morton if you think that is going to be a huge offensive output. I'm sort of reserving Texas Tech, ASU guys for GPPs mostly. But I do think, you can go 2 quarterbacks and feel just fine about it. GPP look for Blake Chapin as well. But if you are having a hard time trusting those guys, or like a Riley Leonard to continue to run in your main, because I think it's pretty hard to pull the trigger on Leonard in main just yet. Double green is the way to go. But I am certainly on the 4 running back lineup. There is so many good options. Kyle Monagai, who for Rutgers we think is going to do very well. I'm all over Devin Neal. Taj Brooks is always good. We know Cam Scattaboo is projecting as major chalk. Ollie Gordon's around. I know that's a taboo name to say. Jarquez Hunter is a nice look. Quindon Jackson, Phil Maffa, Micah Bernard's in a great DVP spot. Montrell Johnson in a bounce back spot. So there's just way too many running backs, and I got to get 4 of them. I wish I could play more, but it's a 4 running back slate. And I know groupthink conventional wisdom says you always have to play quarterback in the super flex, and I still to this day, we are seeing more lineups in our opponents having 4 running backs, but when asked outright, a lot of the people in the industry are going to say a quarterback. And we have the data to show in college football, it's simply not necessary. Unless you nail the dual threat quarterbacks and they go nuts. All right. I got more questions here, but let me get into the ownership. Woolsey asks, is this okay for cash? He's got Tyler Shuck as his quarterback pairing with Ja'Cory Brooks. I do like that quite a bit. In the 2 quarterback lineup, he's gone Shuck and Taylor Green. I neglected to say Tyler Shuck there in my prior speech, but he's definitely in play there. I don't hate that at all. All right, so real quick, let's do the ownership. And then I'll get the rest of these questions answered. Okay, so we're going to do it by position as we do. Sorry, I have like a million spreadsheets open here. I just want the right one. There it is. Okay. So quarterback right now on DraftKings, these are your top 5 for what I project to be the highest owned quarterbacks. Taylon Green, no surprise. Taylon Green, we've been pretty adamant. He's, the dual threat upside is there. Auburn defensively hostile environment. It's going to be a little bit tougher, but his rushing ability just makes him way too valuable. Second, we have Tyler Shook, who I expected him to be, somewhat higher owned, but not as high as the second. So Tyler Shook, Garrett Green, we figured that. Garrett Green, dual threat upside. We just saw Matt Sluka for UNLV run all over Kansas. So the expectation there is that Garrett Green as a dual threat can do so as well. Garrett Nussmeier, people loving the LSU group. And then Riley Leonard rounds out your top 5. So those are your 5 highest projected quarterbacks. Some leverage opportunities with Blake Shapen, as we mentioned, Baron Morton, and maybe a repeat of Jalen Daniels from last week. All right, at running back, Phil Maffa, highest owned by a million miles, 50+% ownership in single entry and cash, high dollar. Do not be shocked. There's times where chalk, you might look at it and be like, man, I'm not feeling this. My research doesn't put me there. My build doesn't put me there. I don't want to have to force it just because he's going to be highly owned. Maffa is a great play. Matchups there. The workload will be there. His price is really good. And it's just one of those situations where it's good chalk. So don't be afraid to play Maffa. I don't think you should be messing around with fading him in your main this week. I think it's going to be real tough if he drops a 30 and you don't have him at that price. Second highest owned projected running back, Cam Scatabo. I'm going to be underweight on Scatabo. I worried about it. Yes, we know Raleigh Brown is injured and not going to be playing. DeCarlos Brooks is back, warming up and going to be in the mix, but how much work would he actually take from Cam? Cam is used in a myriad of ways. Similar to Conyer, so we mentioned, Cam gets direct snaps. He gets pass catching opportunities. Hell, he's even thrown the ball before and gets a ton of carries. Excuse me. So I can understand why. High scoring game, Scatabo. Then we have Corey Kiner. He's just so cheap. Was the one that I was worried about getting swayed off of at the beginning of the week when the slate dropped. I went right to Kiner and thought, man, this is a really good spot. 5.2K. Let's do it. And then I saw some kind of naysayers in Houston's defense being better than it actually has shown and a few other things. But looking at the expectations for ownership here, Kiner, one of the highest owned running backs on the slate. That does not surprise me. And that is a piece of good chalk that I'm going to have. Then we have Taj Brooks. He is up there in the top 5. Very expensive. I think we might run into some Brooks Scatabo lineups. Definitely don't mind that, but that doesn't leave a lot of room for Devin Neal or Kyle Monagai. And then rounding out the top 5, we have Jarquez Hunter, another guy who's just cheap in a good opportunity there. We saw last week he finally broke out with Hank Brown at quarterback over Peyton Thorne. Those running opportunities are there for Hunter. Definitely like it. Leverage opportunities exist with Montrell Johnson, who's in a great bounce back spot. Mississippi State cannot defend the run at all. Scatabo rang them up for 200+ yards. Kyle Monagai is right around 18%. I think he is a fantastic play in all formats. I've slammed his overs and props. I have him on DraftKings in afternoon and main, just all over him. So some decent leverage there. Also, you have the kid from LSU, Caden Durham. He's very cheap. We don't know if he's actually going to continue to get the majority of the carries. I think Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson are still in the mix. I think that's why he's not projected to be too highly owned yet. We need to see another game before you really go all in and play him. Jake had asked me if I thought he was going to be above 30%. I didn't. I thought he'd be more like 15 to 20, but now it looks like it might even be less than that. So leverage opportunities there. And then Micah Bernard. People not wanting to use a Utah running back, I get it. the DVP is extremely strong. Oklahoma State just cannot stop the run. They're not particularly great in the secondary either. Cam Rising's hands bothering him, not 100%. I think there's going to be a lot of Micah Bernard in this game, and people just aren't pulling the trigger on him. I ended up not using him in my main, but you can bet your booty that I will have him in afternoon and alt builds as well. Bernard's just one of those ones I can't get away from. And Ollie Gordon, who projects way under 5% owned. Obviously, you can't use him in your main slate. There's a lot of salary you have to use there, but man, the leverage opportunities for what we coming into the year believe to be the best running back in all of college football. Ollie Gordon is fantastic. The offensive line of Oklahoma State has not held its end of the bargain. Gordon's not doing particularly well there, but I think that we see a shift. Every team that's been out the last couple, Arkansas, Tulsa, they've been stacking the box, forcing Bowman to beat them. Guess what? Bowman's been beating them, throwing 3+ touchdowns. I don't think Utah plays it that way. I think they play a more balanced approach, and that's going to offer Gordon some more running lanes. So you got to get a GPP exposed lineup to Ollie Gordon. I think it's a big mistake if you don't. And then lastly, my top running back on the slate is Devin Neal. Devin Neal's projecting to be 2 to 3% owned on DraftKings, and that's because most people are looking to go Brooks and Scatterbo. An ideal situation for us. We had Gordon at 18% last week. We loved it pre-lock. It didn't work out for us, whatever. But if you can get a running back of that caliber at that expected rostership in what amounts to be a great matchup on paper. Neal has great history against West Virginia, by the way. And I don't think they played last year, but 2 years ago, he wrecked them. Different personnel now, of course. But Neal is going to get heavy carries. He's going to factor in the passing game. And last week, Jalen Daniels scored on 2 long rushing touchdowns. That was variance. Look for Neal to get back into the end zone, 100+ yards, a possible 3% ownership. Sign me up, man. If the slate comes down to Neal versus Brooks or Scatterbo for me, I will take those odds. I'm more than happy to be on that side of things. Devin Neal is an absolute star and honestly, one of the most consistent players in all of college football. So there you have it there. Let's get into wide receivers. We are about 27 minutes to lock. We'll wrap this up here in about 15 minutes. So keep piling in those questions. We're going to get to them next. Wide receiver ownership, no surprise to you. Ja'Cory Brooks, well over 50%. He's underpriced. They fell asleep there. It's way more expensive on FanDuel. It doesn't make sense for him to be this cheap. There are some leverage opportunities with his own teammates, but for the most part, Shook has been looking. And by the way, I had this discussion with someone else this week. I know it looks weird on his name. It should be Shaw for show or Shub. It is Tyler Shuck. I know it sounds weird, but I just want to throw that out there because some joker out there will give me a hard time on the pronunciation otherwise. Anyways, Ja'Cory Brooks, 15 targets for Louisville, by far the team leader. Next closest is Jadon Thompson with 6 and Chris Bell with 5. Now, I do see some Chris Bell chatter out there as leverage to Ja'Cory Brooks, but I don't want to get too cute. I don't think we need to. Just play Ja'Cory Brooks there in your main lineups, high dollar, cash, all that good stuff. You're running some GPP alts, then yeah, by all means, get some exposure to the others just in case they're the ones that catch touchdowns. Maybe it is Bell. He's only 4K. Perhaps he, takes a big one, 60 yards for a score. He did have a 48-yard reception against Jacksonville State, 3 catches for 61 yards. I think he's better than he's shown. Jadon Thompson's there at 4.3, more of a PPR look, perhaps. So there's definitely some opportunities there, but Ja'Cory Brooks, very, very obvious. Then we have Elijah Badger. Badger's ownership projection has shot up, and that obviously has to do with the fact that Elijah Wilson is out, Eugene Wilson is out. Just hate that the fact that there's that quarterback swapping going on, but we have Badger there, followed by Xavier Henderson of Cincinnati, just 35 targets on the year, heavy volume for him. Kevin Coleman, the top player on Mississippi State, and he is getting peppered with targets and playing in a position there out of the slot for most of the time, which is a spot that just murdered Florida when Miami played them way back in week 1. I think Coleman has a very nice game. And then our 5th member of the top 5 ownership group, Josh Kelly of Texas Tech. Leverage opportunities, perhaps Andrew Armstrong of Arkansas, because of the fact that there's those expensive running backs that people are playing. It doesn't leave a lot of room to pay 6.9 for Armstrong. I love him as a pair with Taylon Green or on his own. It's not necessary to pair them if you can't afford it. Seydou Traore, cheap sub 4K tight end, calling my shot there with Traore. I think he scores a touchdown, his first of the season. That happens today against Florida. I am very, very high on him. And then Jordan Tyson of ASU in that same game with Texas Tech has established himself as the WR1, had a huge game, 6 catches, over 100 yards in the score. Look for him to be heavily involved today. Price is still favorable, under 6K. You can get there with him. And then one more, which we've already talked about a lot, Jalen Conyers, who I think scores a touchdown today as well. And then I lied, one more, Dorian Singer of Utah. If Isaac Wilson ends up being the quarterback, I think you see Singer have a huge game. I think Dorian Singer scores today. I'm just not ready to sit here and say Dorian Singer is washed. He still leads the team in targets. He has not looked like the Arizona version of himself in now over a year and a half. Crowded receiver room at USC last year, but he's definitely the guy. When you look at Brant Kuthi and Caleb Lohner at tight end, yes, in the red zone, those are the guys that Rising or Wilson will look to. But when it comes to moving the change, getting first downs, Dorian Singer is still that guy. He just has had poor variance when it comes to scoring. I think he breaks that rut today. Dorian Singer is a sneaky option here. His prices come down a little bit. I do think he does very well. All right. Rounding back to the questions. Milton, pick one. Jarquez Hunter, Devin Neal, Micah Bernard. Different price points. Devin Neal. If pricing doesn't matter, Devin Neal. This is basically Ollie Gordon redux in that we have a very typically consistent running back, slate shattering upside, and a relatively high floor. But we're getting him at a way cheaper price point than the 10K Ollie was last week. Now, hopefully the result is different and Neal actually does go off and scores the touchdowns and we're all happy, and he doesn't go 18 for 33 and no touchdowns like Ollie Gordon. So Devin Neal, but don't sleep on Michael Bernard. Donaldson at 4,900 seems super cheap. Definitely. I didn't find myself getting too much West Virginia this week. Still sharing the main worry here is that Donaldson sharing carries with Jaheim White, right? They're both going to get somewhere between 10 to 15 as a floor. Against Pittsburgh, Donaldson actually took 19 carries. White is getting more targets as a pass catcher, but they're pretty even there as well. So it's just the fact that they're sharing. But yeah, 4.9 for Donaldson, 5.3 for White. That's solid. And then you also have to factor in the Garrett Green as a rushing quarterback. He hasn't really taken off just yet. He had 49 rushing yards against Pittsburgh, 68 against Albany, and just 5 against Penn State. This could be the game if we, think he can replicate what Sluka did for UNLV a while back, 100 plus rushing yards. That would also take from the pot on Donaldson and White. I think if this was a different week where we were super starved for value, we had, 4 or 5 really great quarterbacks, top end receivers. I think then we could really look to him and be like, you know what, Donaldson at this price, let's get him in there. But it's just kind of tough to get there. There's some circumstances and scenarios going against him, but certainly love him as a GPP look because we know that upside is there. And looking through my ownership numbers here, very minuscule. Not a lot of people are going to be on him whatsoever. All right, Brett asks, Traore or Royer? Why you got to do it to me, Brett? Huh? So Royer is definitely, I guess, I was going to say safer, but they're both pretty safe, believe it or not. The nice thing for Royer, the Ohio State transfer, is that the Cincinnati pass game is very concentrated target-wise. Xavier Henderson, 35 targets, and then you have Joe Royer with 18. And they're using Royer, out wide as a slot. He's not just running as a tight end and blocking. He's actually being used as more of a hybrid receiver type. Next closest player on the team is Aaron Turner with 8 targets. And then you have a bunch of players with 6, 7, 3. So Royer is probably the answer because I can tell you with confidence he's going to, be in a position where he's targeted 5+ times. I think Traore will as well, but the problem is he's got other weapons that he has to compete with. So on a not factoring in price and all this other stuff, just opportunity, I think the answer is Royer, but that I love Traore. I'm calling a touchdown with him. Does have 15 targets on the season, which is second behind Kevin Coleman with 20. The other weapons here, Mario Craver, deep threat. You have Kelly Akarahe, the UTEP transfer, who's now getting healthy suddenly and had a bunch of targets against against Toledo. After missing the early part of the season, he had 6 targets, 4 catches for 32 yards. So, there's a bunch of different mouths to feed here, but the way that Mississippi State passing game is working and the game script certainly favors them. And we also shouldn't sleep on Creed Whittemore in this receiver room. His older brother, Trent Whittemore, who we're familiar with, he's also going to be more involved going forward if we can believe any of the coach speak that's been coming out for Mississippi State this week. So Royer, but Traore is in the mix. Looking at my alt builds, I've got Traore in them. I don't have a lot of Royer. So I say Royer, but then I play Traore, but I do think Royer is a little bit safer, but definitely like both. Also have a anytime touchdown prop out on Traore that I think I might have forgot to add to the tracker, but I'll make sure it's in there before we're done. All right, let's go into Discord here. DK or Badger, and who is lower owned? So DK will be lower owned. Which we've already kind of talked about. Again, DK does get the distinction of the favorite receiver of Graham Mertz. They have that relationship from Wisconsin. So DK lower owned, but Badger is the play I would rather have. All right. 5.5K wide receiver range on DK. Kevin Coleman at 5K is my answer. Jake Kuchek also jumped in the Discord answering that one. Really like him. Badger in the mix there. A couple of other 5.5 options that you can look to, perhaps. Broden in a GPP, Tyrone Broden for Arkansas. I do think he has an opportunity to house one long. It's kind of a deep play threat there, but looking at the various options there, it's certainly Coleman and Badger. I don't see anything above those two that we really should be taking for a main lineup at least. If playing Traore, is it okay to go Coleman and SE? I don't mind that. I think there's going to be enough. There's going to be enough work there. They're certainly going to be throwing the ball a lot. Now, Florida is a little susceptible to the run, but Mississippi State, Johnny Daniels is still developing. I think he'll end up being their guy at running back, but they're going to throw a lot. So you can utilize both, and you don't have to play Shapen in that lineup for it to work. All right. Dart throw wide receiver, $3,500 or less on DK. I did have actually, let me just pull it up here because I do have a couple of names here that we can look to. This is usually our specialty. Traore's just a little bit high there on 3.7, so we can't use him in that spot. Where is he? The Clemson kid. There's so many Clemson names. Min Price. Where is he? TJ Moore. TJ Moore, the other freshman. Now I like Wesco better, but TJ Moore is 3K. And like I said, I expect Brown to be like somewhat limited, even if he does play. So I do like TJ Moore. I think that the Clemson receivers, the cheap ones, are still pretty interesting. Here's the thing, like Clemson pass game just went so nuclear and Maffa's price is so bad that everybody's going to be on Maffa. So nobody's going to be looking to the Clemson passing game like they might have otherwise. So I think you can get some shots here in various GPP iterations of some interesting plays. So yeah, TJ Moore at min price, I think is worthy and in the conversation. All right, we're about 14 minutes away from lock. Fire off. Let me check over on X, but keep firing off any questions that you may have. There's a pretty decent amount of plays under 4K that are worthy of some GPP exposure, not necessarily looking to get too cute. Luke Haas is there at 3-2. That's who Jake answered in the Discord. Yeah, and touchdown dependent players are kind of worrying me at the moment, especially with the way that Tulane didn't work out last week, but don't want to get rattled by any means. Haas is great. And if you want a pairing partner for Taylor Green and you can't afford Andrew Armstrong, certainly can go to Luke Haas and this guy in the red zone. Can any running backs be paired with their quarterbacks this week? Yes. You can do Jaquin Jackson, of course, with Taylor Green. That's one, like we fought for the 4 running back lineup and people are coming around to it. The other one that has worked a lot for college is playing a running back with their quarterback. This works when you've got a run heavy team that, the mobile quarterback. And when he does throw passes, he tends to check down or, throw shorter routes to the running back. And Jackson is definitely that guy who we can count on for 20 plus touches, getting some short yardage work in the passing game, getting a bunch of carries. And then of course you have Taylor Green, who showed against Oklahoma State, capable of throwing for over 400 yards. And then as he's shown on the ground consistently 3 straight games, over 60 yards, 96 against UAB, he can also get it done. And there's just no real backup running back. Rashad Dubinian is the main backup. And then you've got Rodney Hill. Neither of those guys are threats to usurp more than 2 or 3 carries away. And that's just for like water break status. So those are the primary. That's the top one on the slate that you can run, Jackson and Green. It didn't make my main. I did get exposure to Jackson in an alt lineup though, but I did not end up pairing them. But I'm not against it by any means. I think you could also do a Garrett Green, like Donaldson or Jaheim White type of build in GBP. That works okay because of the run heavy sets that West Virginia tends to be towards. Baron Morton and Taj Brooks is a little spendy, but it's doable. And then I guess I would say I'm seeing Nussmeier getting some ownership. You could do Nussmeier and Caden Durham because of how cheap he is, but theoretically the only duo that I would take in Maine would be Jaquin Jackson and Taylor Green. But there has been slates where there's been multiple. So okay. We are about 11 minutes away. Fire up those last minute questions. I'm going to drop some of my best bets real quick and then we'll get out of here. I appreciate you guys' continued support. You guys have been awesome. It's about to get real here. We're just about 7 weeks away from college basketball. So you'll be able to expect the CBB iteration of the Super Show on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, and then of course CFB on Thursday and Saturday. So we're gonna be doing a lot of shows this year, just like before. Hope you guys are ready. Gonna start rolling out some college basketball previews here real soon, and we also have the YouTube summer series that I did previewing those. What's going on with this? Just double checking news real quick, guys. Oh yeah, FanDuel locks. All right. All right. Obvious FanDuel plays or FanDuel locks. Ask Craig. So let's go here. So at running back, get my pricing sheet up. At running back, like you've got some real spendy options, right? Like Moffat 10K, not nearly as appealing there as he is on DraftKings. The 8,500 price tag for Devin Neal on FanDuel. And for context here, Montrell Johnson is 8'7", Brashard Smith is 8'8", and Micah Bernard is 8'6", all more expensive slightly than Devin Neal. I might be the only person on Devin Neal today, and I'm perfectly fine with that island. So to me, Devin Neal at that price point on FanDuel seems very obvious. I am really surprised he's not getting more love. Jaheim White, not necessarily obvious, but he is there at 6'4" on the other side of that game. Let me go to, I like this kid. Jake's doing the night slate article as usual, but I will have a player pull up. Bryson Washington from Baylor, the freshman. There's some good freshmen this year. He absolutely nuked in his first collegiate game last week, and it sounds like he's kind of pushed his way to the top of the pecking order immediately. There's still going to be a committee somewhat there, but priced at only 5'8", he has major zip, can score a touchdown there. So I think Bryson Washington and Devin Neal are really cheap options there on FanDuel that maybe aren't getting the level of notoriety that they probably should be. Looking at the tight end wide receiver group, there are a few cheapies here that I saw. I just want to make sure that I'm on the right slate. Elijah Arroyo at 5'9". My Cam Ward lineups are going to have Arroyo both on DK and FanDuel. Arroyo has been a pretty solid floor PPR type guy, but he's also in the red zone, one of Ward's first looks. He's going to put up a lot of touch. He's going to score a lot. Arroyo's touchdown mark by the end of the season is going to be 10 to 12. I firmly believe that. You also have my guy Seydou Traore there at 5'2", so you can get a cheap tight end in there between Arroyo or Traore, in which I expect both to score. So that'll get you some value to open up things for that Cam Ward ownership. And then the wide receiver plays, Travis Hunter is very expensive. It makes it so tough at 11K, but how good has he been? To me, Savion Williams at 8'8". I don't mind Jake Hoover also from TCU. The TCU SMU game looks like it's going to be a really good one. They played each other in each of the last 2 seasons, and they have been played into the 60s. Really like Savion Williams. He is flourishing, becoming the guy. Reminds me a lot of Malachi Fields with his skill set. Priced there at 8'8". And then still Ja'Cory Brooks at 7'8", not as cheap as he is on DraftKings, but 7'8" is more than reasonable there for a Ja'Cory Brooks. And then one more, Elijah Badger, 6'9". Gotta like it with the amount of guys missing from their receiver room today. That's just a very good price there for Elijah Badger to be able to open up things in the rest of your lineup. And Lewis Bond from Boston College, another one at 6'5", that to me, and I'll have a lot of him on the night set, is going to score a touchdown today and possibly put up 100 yards. All right, 6 minutes to lock. Let's see. Armstrong Badger or Kelly Coleman for DK main cash. Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I would lean to the second. Coleman's he's too good of a play. Kelly has to share target. So I think that one is more of a flip, but I will lean towards the Coleman Kelly side for that one. Just because of my investment in Coleman. But Armstrong is a fantastic look. All right, I think that's it. We're done. We're going to slide into lock here. It is 4.5 minutes away. Appreciate your guys' continued support. That'll wrap it up. You can check me out at dubdeuces85 on all social media platforms, in the Discord of ftnfantasy.com. There will be content still coming out today, galore. The night slate right up from Jake, and I will have player pool, cores, and projections for the night set, and then my thoughts, notes on the 2-game late night as well. We'll wrap it up here. Green screens and window trips in our future. Let's get after it. Thanks, guys. Best of luck today. Let's do it.